I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle, along with Juan Williams, Eric Bowling, Dana Perino, and little weirdo Greg Gutfeld. Aww. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Vibe. Well, it's a week away from President-elect Trump's inauguration, and Democrats are desperately grasping at straws to delegitimize his resounding victory. The Clinton camp still in full-blown denial of the facts. Mr. Trump won fair and square.
The election is over, and Donald Trump is going to be inaugurated as our next president. That's not the question here. I think the question is whether outside actors influence the outcome of the election.
Every day there are new developments, new shoes dropping, so to speak, that call into question the legitimacy of his win. First, it was with respect to Russian interference, and now with respect to the FBI, we see that Jim Comey's actions are sufficiently questionable that the internal watchdog at DOJ thinks that they merit an independent review. So I think Donald Trump is just trying to cling to whatever legitimacy still is in effect here.
Well, the president-elect had a lot to say about it this morning, tweeting, quote, "What are Hillary Clinton's people complaining about with respect to the FBI? Based on the information they had, she should never have been allowed to run. Guilty as hell. They were very nice to her. She lost because she campaigned in the wrong states. No enthusiasm!" Exclamation point. Charles Krauthammer, great name, right, has some thoughts on the DOJ's new probe of the FBI's handling of the Clinton investigation. It is another attempt by Democrats to discredit the president-elect.
It looks as if the Democrats, on their way out the door, are trying to leave behind as many landmines as they can to at least cast doubts on the legitimacy of the Trump victory. I'm not sure this is the best way to assure a good transition, one where you transfer not just the authority of office, but the legitimacy. But that seems to be what the Democrats want to do as they get out of power.
And we got one more for you. John Lewis saying that President Trump is not a legitimate president. Take a listen.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You do not consider him a legitimate president. Why is that?
I think the Russians participated in helping this man get elected, and they helped destroy the candidacy of Hillary Clinton.
Interesting. Blame game. So what do you make of these comments?
Well, I think that the Trump camp was smart early on to recognize what was happening here when the Democrats never settled upon a real reason why she lost. Even though she conceded right away, everything obviously was in order, even with all the suggestions of Russian interference in terms of hacking into or getting into John Podesta's emails and then the subsequent release of them. There's no suggestion that there was interference in the actual vote tally. No one has actually said that. And so I do think that you have a concerted effort on behalf of Democrats to try to find something that would explain to them why they lost. At the same time, I think it was quite an extraordinary step for Representative Lewis to say that that's an interview with Chuck Todd of Meet the Press that will air on Sunday in full. But this is the week before the inauguration, and say if the shoe were on the other foot, I think that the Democrats and the media would be going crazy. I think this is actually quite extraordinary and unfortunate.
Yeah, can you only imagine if the flip side of it, Eric, the juxtaposition, if you had, in fact, role reversals, Hillary Clinton winning the presidency, and if anybody even suggested or hinted at that, forget it.
Yeah, and I'm glad, and I want to watch that interview, I'm glad Chuck Todd had that surprised, shocked look on his face, said, "You don't think it was a legitimate win by President-elect Trump?" So Fallon and Clinton Inc. are blaming everything. Remember, it was Russians, then it was Breitbart, and then it was James Comey, then it was the voting booths, and then it was the Russians again. When the reality is she was just a flawed candidate. She was a terrible candidate. Her only message was, "It's my turn, and I'm with her." All she spent $1.2 billion, the final numbers are in, $1.2 billion on this candidacy. All she had to do was win one of these 5 states, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Michigan. She lost all 5 of those, and throw in Wisconsin as well on top of it, just one of those. And every one of those were Barack Obama states except for North Carolina,
and he didn't win them by much.
Yeah, and it should just be a good candidate. Hit the states you need to win first. He did.
He suggested that as well, Eric, like you're saying. He suggested it about her campaign and her candidacy. He's like, look, I went to all of those different counties. I didn't take any of it for granted. So, and she even had the Scooby van. She spent all the money in the world, and it's basically indicative of the government in the United States right now. They throw a lot of money at everything, no results.
You know, the question is, then who is the legitimate candidate? The only legitimate presidential candidate for a liberal Democrat is a liberal Democrat. They would have said the same thing. If you had President Rubio, they would have said he's anti-woman because he's pro-life. If it was President Romney, they'd say he hates the poor because he's just rich Mr. Evil Bags with magic underwear. You know, he's Mormon. He's got to be evil. The President Cruz, they'll just call him like, you know, a right-wing vampire. They would demonize every single person, and it's true. You know, Trump is a different kind of candidate, but they would find a different way to demonize each person because for 8 years, the Democrats and the media have had their candidate. Obama was their mirror. He reflected their dreams, their aspirations, the ideal percentage of body fat. I mean, he could take off his shirt. So now the shoe is on the other foot, and it's a baby booty because they're crying like babies.
Oh my gosh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, that's, you know.
Do you have any rejoinder to the baby booty?
Well, no, I mean, gee, what can I say? It's so overwhelming. I just wonder, what would have happened, Kimberly, if the shoe had been on the other foot?
The booty?
Let me quote Rush Limbaugh. I hope he fails, 2008. Oh, what about Tom DeLay? It's going to be a Marxist socialist agenda from here on out. The country is in trouble. Oh, how about the chairman of the Virginia GOP party? Obama and bin Laden both have friends who bombed the Pentagon. Oh, gee, I wonder who would Republicans behave like that? What did you say?
Those are your political opponents, but none of them said that Barack Obama was not a legitimate
I think
president.
what they're saying is they do not want to acknowledge that the man legitimately won. And of course, we could go into Mitch McConnell saying basically he's going to be a one-term president and he's not legit. This is, to me, the same thing.
She said in October of 2010.
Let me just say, if it's really up to Donald Trump to prove he's legitimate, because you know what, I'm a pragmatic guy.
I'm so sorry.
He
has to prove he's legitimate even though he won the election.
Can you show us his birth certificate?
Yeah, show us. I'm on with you, Greg.
Wait a minute.
Show us the birth certificate.
Maybe he's Russian. That's what it is.
Well, the people, right. Don't go too far with that one. But I will say, to me, when he does things like that press conference that just broke into madness this week, I don't think it helps people to say, oh, that's the real president. I don't think it helps when he doesn't release the tax returns. I don't think when he refuses to sell off his businesses. I think that's why his poll numbers are in the tank right now.
But it doesn't make sense. He hasn't done anything yet to upset these people. And if you look at the nominees...
So it's called breathing.
Yeah, but like what Eric brought up yesterday, the nominees that he's put out there are disagreeing with him. That should be reassuring to these people that it's actually, you know, he isn't a bunch of yes men, and he actually is probably going to move further to the center, and that might bother them because they might have to like him.
He tweeted and said, give their own opinions, not mine.
He met with union leaders today. He's been meeting with union leaders. He's meeting with Democrats. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it's just scaring the liberals who have, A, lost the election, B, see no future for liberalism or leftism in America, going, well, we have to delegitimize this somehow. Somehow we have to pull the legs out.
What if you're just scared of falling in love? Have you ever been there and all of a sudden you don't want to be attracted to somebody? I think these liberals are going like, maybe he's not so bad. Maybe, what if he's like us a little bit? Oh, my God. That's what scares them, Juan. You're scared that you might like him.
Oh, I don't, you know what? I don't dislike him. I think a lot of the things he says, and like the Twitter stuff, I don't get it, why he does it. It seems to me he's hurting himself. But let's come back to the legitimacy question for a second, because it is legitimate to say that the Russians were involved. For a long time, a lot of people on the Republican side said, oh, we don't know, prove it. How do you know the Russians are involved? Now even Donald Trump says the Russians were involved. Okay. Then people say, oh, what about the fact that he had, I think, Kimberly, you said, an overwhelming victory? Oh, but what about the fact that he lost the popular vote by 3 million? Oh,
okay, well, those are in highly populous counties.
I see. And what about...
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I agree with that.
I know, but the problem is they want to change the rules when they don't get the outcome that they want.
Nobody can change the rules. The rules are the Electoral College.
You'd like to, because then you see John Lewis saying, oh, this is an illegitimate presidency.
I don't think anybody can.
But he said that also about GW, right? Didn't John Lewis say that about GW?
I don't remember that.
Look, you guys
Can you look it
laughed.
up?
The liberals laughed. You laughed, and even here, everywhere, said that during with the days leading up to the election, all these pedestrian emails, you laughed that it was irrelevant, that everything that was being leaked in these emails didn't matter.
No.
Then she loses. Now the reason why she lost, and he's not a legitimate president.
Just very quickly, I mean, I think it drove down, I said this to you guys earlier, I think it drove down the perception that she's an honest, credible candidate. Her trustworthy numbers.
It didn't have far to go. It was
How
like
low can you go?
untrustworthy.
It drove them down bad.
From
Listen.
70 to what, 73?
I don't know what it was.
But see, this is
No,
two
trustworthiness?
Yeah, she was
down
destroyed.
she wasn't at 70%.
They were at 67.
Untrustworthy.
They were both.
Untrustworthy.
Yes, they
Underwater
were.
by like
They were
45
both.
points.
Dana?
They were at 64 and 67%
Right.
trustworthy
Right.
together. They were at that. Just on one point on the, if John Lewis had said that about George W. Bush after the recount, in some way, I do think it took Democrats a while, and understandably so, to get okay with the Supreme Court ruling on that recount.
That's a good point.
And then I was going to say something else.
Uh-oh. Great point, sir.
No, you were. No, it was about popularity. You were going one, and then you stopped. It was something about popularity.
Really
All right, now we're going to have to pay some bills, and you're going to get back to us about the GPJ.
Consult my journal.
Yes. Coming up, the president-elect appeared today at Trump Tower with Family Feud host Steve Harvey. What did they talk about? Survey says. Stay tuned.
I don't know this.
President, we're having a debate on how long it takes to fly from Houston to New York. We'll get to that in the break. President-elect Donald Trump appeared before cameras today for a brief moment at Trump Tower and answered this question, how he feels about some of his cabinet picks expressing differing positions from himself during the confirmation hearings. Listen.
I want them to be themselves, and I told them, be yourselves and say what you want to say. Don't worry about me. And I'm going to do the right thing, whatever it is. I may be right, and they may be right. But I said, be yourselves. What do you say, Steve? Let them do it. I could have said, do this, say that. I don't want that. I want them all to be themselves.
And if you're wondering why Steve Harvey was there, stick around for one more thing. We'll hit that in a minute. But meanwhile, the president-elect had a busy morning on Twitter calling out the intel community again, writing, quote, "It now turns out that the phony allegations against me were put together by my political opponents and a failed spy afraid of being sued, totally made up facts by sleazebag political operatives, both Democrats and Republicans. Fake news. Russia says nothing exists. Probably released by intelligence, even knowing there is no proof and never will be. My people will have a full report on hacking within 90 days. Okay, KG.
Taking it to them. I mean, that's what you do. I love the directness about it because you speak directly to the people. You don't have to wait to set up a press conference. Is it completely different than things have been done in the past? It is. And as long as you still hold those press conferences and do that, I have no problem with the future president being very transparent and communicating directly to the people and letting them know and feel like they're part of this process and they don't have to get it filtered from anyone else. Those are his words, those are his thoughts, his sentiments, and then you can decide how you feel about it.
So, Greg, we discussed whether or not the intelligence community has been politicized or is politicized. I think he's calling them out and saying it has been and they may be.
I don't know. I mean, I thought that this was opposition research. It wasn't intel. It wasn't created by us, so it was probably floating around somewhere. But I don't think it's right for him to say that. However, I do. I like the process is interesting. It's as though he's created his own 24-hour cable channel called the Donald Trump channel, and it's like the Donald factor, 24/7. He can get on there and say whatever he wants, and we report it immediately because it's so easy to fill up a block with his tweets. It's like our producers go, hey, it's Friday. Let's do something on tweets. Yeah, we'll get to Langen's quicker.
Well, you know what, though? And this morning I did. I tweeted right after. He had like 7 or 8 in a row, 3 to 5 minutes apart, and they're pretty wide-ranging.
And it's news.
I like
it becomes news.
I like the fact that the leader of the free world, future leader of the free world, is telling everyone what's going on, what he's thinking, versus wondering what's going on in D.C.
Well, and we'll see if it works for him. I mean, the one thing I think is that this past week we have spent not talking about the first 100 days. We've been talking about the last 100 days and Russia, and I actually felt like he and the DNI Clapper had put this to bed the other night. Now it comes back up again. And I also would say that putting intelligence in quotes in his tweets suggesting that they're not intelligent is probably that's not a good way to start for next week. It's unnecessary.
One?
Well, I mean, I'm struck by the idea that I like transparency, but I don't like the idea that it looks like his id is just out of control. It's just like, you know, any thought he has in his mind just goes, wow, 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 and it just echoes, and of course then the media picks it up, as Greg was saying. But he also not only attacks our intelligence community, he then gives credibility to Russia. He says, you know, Russia says probably they didn't do it. I'm like, what? So in other words, he believes Russia. I don't understand. And then why is he going after Hillary Clinton? I think we agreed she lost. It's over. But he's still kicking her. I mean, you know, it's like...
but your side doesn't. They're still trying to delegitimize the victory.
I don't
and
think
John
so.
Lewis is saying he's not a legitimate president. And
well,
they're saying
I think there are real questions
that the
about
election was influenced by the Russians.
Yeah,
and that she would have won, which is all false narrative.
Kimberly's right. That was in response to Fallon and Robbie Mook and some of the other Democrats saying he didn't really earn this victory.
No. What I said
his rebuttal.
he said
this morning, yeah.
He's talking about guilty as hell. Remember, I believe Hillary Clinton's been cleared of all such suspicions now. That's been put to bed. But no, he is back there in this argument about she shouldn't even have been able to run. That's what he said in the tweet.
Well, right, but it's in response to the Democrats saying, hey, the reason why he won is because of James Comey and some of the other Russian hackers.
I got news for Donald Trump. He's president-elect. He's got to stop boggling with all, you know, what are they, that's saying,
this is great. I think
eagles don't chase flies.
Do you like it?
I think that he's owned this thing, and if you're going to get the word, he's basically found the third rail that no one else can touch. Like the press now reacts to him instead of you reacting to the press. So, I mean, why stop it? You know, it's just up to the press to decide whether they want to keep covering it or not. And, you know, when there's not a lot of news going on, it's great.
But didn't he say he wasn't going to do it?
He lied.
Oh.
Final thought?
No, I'm good.
You good? Let's get out of here. Put teleprompter. There we go. Here's the Fox News alert. President Obama's finally getting tough on immigration on his way out the door, but not on our Mexican border, with Cubans fleeing their oppressive regimes. Details of that on the 5 next.
In 2 decades, the U.S. has granted automatic legal residency to almost any Cuban able to escape their communist country and make it to our soil. The policy was called wet foot, dry foot. As of yesterday, it is no more. President Obama ended the immigration privileges after normalizing relations with Cuba. Cuba's government is hailing the move, but there's some pushback here at home. Republican Senator Marco Rubio, a son of Cuban immigrants, says he's concerned by the decision, saying, quote, "We must work to ensure that Cubans who arrive here to escape political persecution are not summarily returned to the regime." It's not clear yet whether President-elect Trump might reverse the new policy when he takes office. So, Greg, we talked a little bit about this this morning on the emails.
Yes.
Because, once again, America is giving up something without getting something in return.
Well, first off, wet foot, dry foot sounds like a prank I used to play on my siblings.
When they sleep.
Yes, when they're asleep. Anyway.
Do it to Juan.
Obama proves Trump correct that this administration they're lousy negotiators. We got nothing in return. You got a cop killer, Chesimard. You got a bomb maker, Morales. Chesimard killed 2 cops, including 1 black officer. They are convicted U.S. criminals, and he couldn't even get them back. I'm assuming he didn't get them back because he's more concerned about what he's getting out of this, which is his legacy, than what America could get out of it. And apparently these are the only immigrants that he would like to deport. And why? Because they were escaping a communist regime, because they were escaping a repressive communist regime. And progressives never saw Cuba that way. They saw Cuba as this beautiful romantic island, the perfect utopia, if only they got a few things right. And the only things they got right was how to kill their enemies.
One of the things about this wet foot, dry foot policy, Eric, is that it started in 1995. One of the concerns with it from both sides of the aisle has been that it basically encouraged people to be really risky, to try to get across that water 90 miles on a rickety boat. But that if you got here, that would be one thing. The other problem is that has left some people stranded in Central America because they tried to do it the other way. So now they are known to have left. They're caught in their country. Now they can't come here. And if they go back, they'll be known to be political enemies.
So the explanation from the White House is that President Obama waited till now so that people wouldn't try to make the trip if they knew it was, you know, you have three weeks.
Which is so weird because when he normalized relations 2 years ago, they all anticipated this would happen. That's why 100,000 more left.
Right. And the other side is, and I think you guys are addressing it, so why would he be doing this? And it's clearly a give back to Cuba. Cuba wants this to further normalize the relationship. But as I think you had pointed out in one of the emails, can you tell me the difference between this and getting to an embassy and saying, I'm declaring, asking for political amnesty?
Yeah, so one of the things is that the wet foot, dry foot policy ending got a lot of attention, but there was also a policy that was started in 2006 to address the fact that Cuba for a long time has used this strategy as a foreign policy tool they train doctors up and then they send them to places like Angola or to Venezuela where they do great work and they do good work, they're good doctors, but they're basically indentured servants. Because you get sent to Venezuela not out of the goodness of Castro's heart, but because they don't have any money to pay for the oil that is being sent to them. So what George W. Bush did when he was president in 2006 is to say to these doctors, if you get sent to one of these countries as an indentured servant and you don't want to be there, if you can get to a U.S. embassy and declare for political amnesty, we will take you in. And Kimberly, what they basically said yesterday is that is no longer allowed under the policy.
Which is really interesting. And of course, then you have to think about the positioning of the president-elect and what would he do, perhaps even reverse this policy. If he did, he would come under criticism because he is trying to secure our borders and have people go about things the right way and not show preferential treatment, etc., because the circumstances have changed, which warranted that proposal to begin with.
Do you think he did this then to screw with Trump? Was that?
No, I think that he did it for his own legacy.
I think so.
I do. What do you think, Juan?
Well, I noticed the business community supports it, and I tell you why.
The wet foot, dry foot policy?
Yeah, I tell you why. I tell you why. Because they see the normalization that we're talking about here as a good thing. They see the potential for American influence in Cuba growing. Because now there's going to be more communication, more transportation routes.
More customers.
More customers.
Well,
tremendous growth
Make
potential.
Cuba great
there.
again.
I have personal objections to the fact that it's, Greg, you said that they kill political.
Yes.
They're killing their own people. They imprison their own people.
Right, but they consider them as opposition.
You know how we complain around here how Obama treats Fox? Imagine what they do to us there. Oh my gosh. So I don't think.
Yet the celebrities go to Cuba and pretend that it's this beautiful, idealist world of the arts.
Those people are twits. I mean, how can you?
Oh,
that is
Beyonce and Jay-Z.
I'm telling you, it's an oppressive regime. I don't think there's any question. But in my heart, I always think, look, we've had this policy for 50 plus years or however, and the status quo hasn't changed. Something, even Marco Rubio says, we need to do something.
I think that they were willing to do the wet foot, dry foot change and that was allowed. But could we not get those convicted criminals back into the United States where they could serve time?
Sure. I think this is all, by the way, I think that's where you said we could have exerted more pressure. But the reality, Dana, is I just feel like, if we really care about the people, the Cuban people, and the terrible conditions they live under, let's try to get something there. As I say, I have real problems with the idea of celebrating Cubans. Cuban leadership. Cuban
that's what you mean.
Right. Even Madam Secretary, the show that I like, got it right on one of their shows because they got her back. But it was a fake one of her.
Yes.
She comes back to a hero's welcome.
There you go.
Show's a little like TV Guide. We give you a little synopsis.
Yes, little shows that we watch. All right, President-elect Trump put the press on notice at his news conference Wednesday. The mainstream media's taken note. The New York Times now drumming up a strategy on how to cover Mr. Trump when he takes office in a week. That's details when we return.
Throughout his campaign and since winning the White House, President-elect Trump hasn't held back on how he feels about the press.
Excuse me, sit down. You weren't called. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Not have these characters on television who don't have the brains they were born with, folks, okay? And they're dishonest. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. The real question is, who's more dishonest? Crooked Hillary Clinton or the media? BuzzFeed, which is a failing pile of garbage.
Quiet.
Mr.
President-elect,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically?
She's asking a question.
Mr. President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
You're attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you give us a question?
I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Mr. Trump's unconventional news conference on Wednesday may have been a wake-up call for the mainstream media. The New York Times is now actually offering a strategy on how journalists should cover our next president, advising reporters that Trump's going to be Trump. So, tell a story. Don't become a story. What do you think, Greg?
Gee whiz.
Gee whiz.
Gee whiz. Here's the problem. Donald Trump likes teachers' pets. So if you indulge him, then he will indulge you. If you are critical, then he gets mad at you.
That's true.
So you can play the game and be really, really nice and say nice things about him, but then you got to look at yourself in the mirror. You're not a journalist anymore. So I think you always have to go and say the right thing, no matter what. If you think something's wrong, you got to speak up. But I wouldn't panic. I don't know why people are panicking about this.
Well, because I think he's having such success. I mean, basically at that news conference, he used the media as a punching bag. And I think he succeeded with it.
There's always been a contentious relationship
but
with
they
the
came
media.
after him.
They came after him?
They came after him, and he came back at them.
What did they do?
Well, the point is he was defending himself because there were stories being spread about him that were false, that were very outrageous, and he said this is not true. He disproved it to the point of even having his attorney show the passport and say that he had never even been to Russia, let alone Prague, etc. And so he's saying, look, these are false narratives, false stories, propaganda that was proffered against him to try to delegitimize his presidency. He has a right to defend himself. I
certainly agree. Eric, so what do you say in terms of general coverage? How would you go about this? Because even in the aftermath of the news conference, you saw certain elements in the press attacking other elements. It looks like they're not even a united front in saying we are journalists and we have an obligation, as Greg was said, to just give account of the facts.
I think this has been a brilliant strategy on Trump's part. Early on, he realized, I mean, the only group with a lower approval rating than Congress is the media. So he saw, wow, that's a target I can own. I can hit the bullseye every time I shoot at that target.
There's a vulnerability there.
Yeah, there is a vulnerability. But I think the Times is right, though. Boy, I got to tell you, that struck home when they said, don't become the story. That's what he was able to do. He was able to make any descending reporter media outlet the story.
Correct.
He made it, and it was brilliant strategy. So the Times is onto something there. But I think Donald Trump's media presence, footprint is so massive that he'll evolve into, as Greg points out, he says stuff, we cover it.
So, Dana, you're the media expert here, and I'm struck by the idea that he has...
I thought we were all pretty good.
We're not. You're not that. You know, you're so
She has
special.
a great point journal, though. We don't have that. It's a bestseller.
Anyway, back to Ms. Perino. So the idea is that if you hear something and it's not from Donald Trump, well, if you're a Trump supporter, don't believe it. You've got to go to Donald Trump.
Well, except for even remember Kellyanne Conway said last week something along when she was being pressed on something that he had said. She said, well, listen, why do you always look at what he said rather than knowing what's in his heart? And that's hard to do as well because we don't know him as she does. And so I think that here's the thing. Facts always win. So from both sides, just have more facts, and I think that everything comes out in the wash. When the New York Times says to tell the story, I think that Jenna Johnson of the Washington Post did a really good job of that all year. She was on a campaign, and if you look back at some of her stories, one of her strategy was she went to the events, she quoted people that were at the events, she used their own words to tell the story, no narrative, and then she backed off from it. And I actually think that that was an extremely successful way to cover the news of this new president. The other thing I think, vengeance and humiliation of other people doesn't help you advance your agenda when you get into governing, I don't think. I mean, we'll see how it goes.
It helped him in the campaign, then.
It helped in the campaign,
he would
but I
point
think
at people, and he would absolutely get the crowd to root against them and curse them out.
But then they would bite, and they can't seem to not be able to help themselves. Katie Turner, you're pointing about, talking about NBC, Katie Turner, same thing. Jim Acosta with CNN. There are those people who just can't help themselves and say, as Dana points out, just do the story. They want to fight back, and they'll go on TV and say, look what happened to me today when I was at a Trump rally. He pointed out, and the crowd got against me. Instead of just going, look, here's what happened at the Trump rally. Tucker Carlson is nailing it because liberal journalists think they're going to beat him at his game. Liberal journalists think they're going to beat Trump at his game. You're not going to beat Trump. You're not going to beat Tucker. But there seems to be a desire to, I'm going to still try.
Well, I think people don't like being bullied, liberal or conservative, but we'll see how this goes because it seems like it's a central story for the next 4 years. Don't go anywhere because guess what? Facebook Friday up next.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
Matlock. Facebook Friday, the 13th. We answer your scary questions. I'm going to start with Dana. From Lori B. In honor of Friday the 13th, what is your favorite horror movie and why?
I actually was never allowed to watch them when I was a kid. So I don't like them now as an adult either. But when I remember going to a slumber party and they watched Carrie, and I've never been able to unsee that.
Yeah,
I was mortified.
Great film. John Travolta was in
Life's
that, by the way.
too short to watch horror movies.
Well, especially for you. Life is always short. Eric!
Short story.
You're not going to do it. All horror. I just
He
love
loves
the
it
horror
all.
genre. I do.
Doesn't
All
scare
of
you?
them. Cabin in the Woods. They don't scare me anymore. They don't. For the life of me, what's the one with the Umbrella Corporation where it's under this? It's a zombie series. I can't remember. I adore it. But Walking Dead. Every Sunday when it's in series, I love it. There's a new character, Negan. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is the best actor I've seen acting on television in a very long time.
Wow. That's
He was great in The Watchmen. You ever see The Watchmen? No?
I haven't.
Oh, sorry.
Zack
Good actor.
Snyder?
Good actor.
Gotta check it out.
All right.
Juan.
Moving on.
Horror film?
Is Silence of the Lambs a horror film?
Yes, I would call that a thriller.
It's not
horror
a fairy
film.
tale.
I ain't happy. No.
Or a
But I
romance.
thought-
Story.
Love story. Of a sort.
Although some people do like to do that.
Yikes! We're gonna give you an escort from now on. Anyway, I like Silence. Aliens is another one I
it's
like.
fantastic.
And of course, the classic to me was Psycho. I must say, I don't like horror movies personally. I just, for me, life is enough of an upset. I don't know why you would want to do that to yourself. But
You're at this table every day.
That's true. But I once had an interview with Wes Craven because.
Brilliant.
Yeah, Wes Craven, like Friday the 13th and all that, and Elm Street. And the reason I was talking to him was he was saying to me that minority kids are the biggest audience for horror films. And I was saying, well, why is that? Why do you make horror films for minority kids? And he says, well, they're so shocked by so much going on. They come to us for laughs. They think it's just great fun.
Todd says it's Resident Evil. Sorry.
There you go.
Get in there.
Kimberly, quickly. I didn't realize I was going to get
I don't really love it. I don't like any of them. I think Friday the 13th is terrifying.
Yes.
I think, speaking of, and I think that Willy Wonka and the Chocolate
That's
Factory.
not a horror film.
It is to me.
Wow.
And you know what else is?
What?
The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, you're freaked out by the flying monkeys.
I would never go
That
see
scared the
Wizard of
hell
Oz.
out of me as a kid.
Do you agree?
The flying monkeys.
You find it very scary.
I couldn't sleep. The flying monkeys
So now you agree
terrified
with
me.
me.
Yeah. No, that was a scary one. I remember, but I loved it. I watched it every year.
You know what also scared me? The Laurel and Hardy movie with the March of the Wooden Soldiers. That was freaky, too, because they had some weird-looking monsters.
You know the one that I almost left the theater was Morgan Freeman's A President. Is it called Independence Day?
Wait.
Where there's going to be the big, the asteroid's going to hit the ocean and the world's going to...
That's bad.
You know what?
So's I Am
You already
Legend.
had your-
I almost left.
You
you had
probably
your chance.
liked I Am
So
Legend.
I have a tie.
That's so scary, and everyone's
That
like,
I hated I Am Legend.
I
love
no one's
those.
left
Yeah, I love those
alive. It's like the
post-apocalyptic
dog.
movies.
And
What
the,
movie was that?
I Am Legend with
Oh,
Will
great movie.
Smith.
The original The Omega Man
Scary.
with Chuck Heston. Watch that one. That's a good
How
one.
about any Chucky movies?
Soylent
Horrible.
Green. I have a tie. I have the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is terrifying, and of course, Love Actually.
I knew you were going to
It's a
say
horror
that.
film.
That's your
It's a horror film. It's my nightmare to be trapped in that film. All right, let's go this way. To you, Kimberly, from Tammy L. If a young person came to you asking what's the most important thing for living a good life, what would you say?
Most important thing. Okay, I would say working hard, but besides that, don't do anything that you're going to regret, when you wake up in the morning. It's a pretty good idea if you think about it ahead of time. Like, go to bed at night, like, feeling good about what's going on and what you've done that day, and you can wake up in the morning. You don't shame your parents.
I just realized I'm probably a lot of people's regrets. Juan?
Yep.
Really?
A long time ago.
Just saying.
It was stuck. It was a layover. Juan?
I'd say pick a passion and go for it early. I think most people I meet who are very successful, they started very young. So even in elementary school, high school, junior high, just go for it. Do it. Do what you're crazy about right now.
I completely, just a twist on it, and find the job that you love, not the one that you have to have, and stay with it. And if you're doing a job you don't love, just be true to it. Be true to yourself.
I would say avoid comparing yourself to others.
Ooh, that's good.
Like looking at someone's Instagram and thinking that your life isn't as good, because you have to also remember everybody suffers. Everybody has something that they're dealing with, so don't compare yourself.
I used to look at people
Your
my
life looks
age.
pretty good,
I used to look at
Dana,
people my age.
on
If they were doing
Instagram.
better than me, that drove me crazy. Like when I was 25 and I saw another 25-year-old doing really well, I would feel like crap. And then I would start to look at older, like as I got older, and then I saw 24-year-olds doing better. It drove me crazy.
I know, but that's a self-esteem issue.
Well, when you're young, you know,
I
you want to get
guess
ahead.
you got to feel good about where you are and what you're doing.
Yes.
Were you able to?
Yeah, finally. But mine is proper hygiene and grooming. That's sometimes the most 90% of life is, you know, taking a shower, combing your hair.
Yeah, you don't want to be a germaphobe.
And then putting on that
90% of
shorty
life.
robe.
The next
Towel
question
him
was
off.
so good. All right, well.
What?
Yeah.
Just what is it?
Theme song for President Trump's inauguration.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
Eye of the Tiger.
Oh, very good. Eye of the
fine.
Tiger.
Okay, start me up. Yeah.
Start me up. One.
What was the one he used at this campaign event?
Can't always get what you want.
Yeah.
There you go.
How about you got to know when to hold them?
Ooh.
You gotta know when
On that
to
note, I would say
hold.
anything from The Wiz.
Know when to
Very nice.
hold 'em.
One more thing is up next.
Know when to
That's not
walk
proven.
away. For one more thing, and now, a very special honoring heroes. And thousands of mourners gathered earlier at St. Patrick's Cathedral to bid a final farewell to beloved New York City police detective Stephen McDonald, who passed away Tuesday. The 59-year-old was left paralyzed from the neck down after a teenager shot him in the line of duty in Central Park 30 years ago. Amazingly, McDonald forgave that gunman and dedicated his life to fighting violence and hate. President-elect Trump paid tribute to him this morning, tweeting, "A beautiful funeral today for a real NYC hero, Detective Stephen McDonald. Our law enforcement community has my complete and total support." Detective McDonald will be remembered as a symbol of faith, forgiveness, and inspiration. May God bless you and your family. Dana?
Okay, so last month, soldiers of the 244th Expeditionary Combat Aviation Brigade, they gathered together to participate in their annual holiday formal ceremony, and they had the Honor Flight Network to honor 93-year-old Corporal Russell Decker. Corporal Decker is an Army vet. He served in World War II. An impressive resume. He was part of General Patton's Third Army in the Battle of Normandy. He was honored at the event with the unit colors and the American flag, and then that flag was cased and flown in Afghanistan over Jalalabad, Kandahar, and Bagram. So congratulations to him, and thank you, sir, for your service.
Very nice. Thank you. All right, who's up next? Since
Greg.
it's not there.
Saturday, 10 o'clock. I got Carrie Keegan, fresh from The Apprentice. She got booted, and Anthony Cumia. It's going to be a great show. Do I have time to do this new news thing? Or no?
Just don't ask, just do it.
All right.
Apologize later.
All right. What?
Oh, you know.
Forget it. I thought there was a little thing that had a roll.
All right, you just blew it.
Yeah, it's okay.
You missed 100% of the shots you don't take, buddy. All right, Juan.
Hey, give him a break.
Oh, that was beautiful.
You love it?
Yeah, it made me very happy.
All right. In his farewell address Tuesday, President Obama said his teen daughters growing up in the White House grew up in the weirdest way possible, proven, by the way, by conspiracy theories that arose over Sasha's absence that Tuesday night. But there are another pair of sisters, Jenna and Barbara Bush. They know how weird it is to be in the White House and growing up. George W. Bush's daughters wrote a heartfelt letter to Sasha and Malia as their time came to a close. Watch this.
Enjoy college. As most of the world knows, we did. And you won't have the weight of the world on your young shoulders anymore.
Take all that you have seen, the people you have met, the lessons you have learned, and let those help guide you in making positive change. We have no doubt that you will.
I thought that was pretty terrific from across political lines. But
Well, they wrote him a letter when they arrived, and then a letter 8 years later.
Okay, because it's called Class Act. Okay, Bowling.
Okay, very quickly, full screen. O'Reilly tonight will be hosting that. Have Anthony Scaramucci, a couple other people are going to go through some of the stuff that Donald Trump was tweeting about, some things we talked about. We'll dig a little deeper into it. But today this happened. I teased it earlier. Steve Harvey visited Donald Trump. Afterwards, they talked a little bit. Listen to what Steve Harvey had to say about why he was there. I found it very interesting and very comforting. Listen.
It's just me following orders from my friend, President Obama, who said, Steve, you got to, as he told everybody, get out behind your computer, stop tweeting and texting, and get out there and sit down and talk. So I stepped from behind my microphone and I came and talked to the guy that's going to be the 45th president of the United States. I did what I was supposed to do.
You know what?
Very nice.
Give the guy a chance and see what happens. I agree. That's fantastic. Steve Harvey, thumbs up.
Good guy. Bring us on Family Feud. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Greg.
All right, let's go to this new news. Greg's Sunny News. Now, many of you don't know who Sonny Obama is. It's their 4-year-old Portuguese water dog who last week bit a visitor on the face. We have under a week left before we can impeach President Obama, and I think we can do it based on this.
So did the visitor deserve it?
That is.
Oh, how dare you blame the victim, Dana?
I'm just saying, that's a nice dog.
What did Ryan Priebus say after he got bit?
What?
I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. So